This video is brought to you by True Tales of Buried Treasure, the largest collection of old treasure magazines in the West. We're pleased to announce that we are now selling our physical magazines directly on our website. You can browse by magazine title or search for a particular issue using the search bar. To pay us a visit, please click the link in the description. Enjoy. Although other states may boast more treasure hunting and metal detecting sites, Montana, rich in diverse resources, has long earned the name the Treasure State. Much of this wealth remains hidden, offering enough mystery and adventure to keep seekers busy for a lifetime. One of the most intriguing stories comes from Ford Meadows, about 15 miles west of Augusta in Lewis and Clark County. Locals say a ghost guards $60,000 in buried gold coins. The tale begins in 1864, when a Blackfoot woman married Samuel S. Ford and settled with him along Ford Creek in the Sun River country. In 1880, their son, Henry Macaulay Ford, homesteaded 640 acres, later called Ford Meadows. Henry, a respected cattleman, often captained roundup crews across the range. He insisted on being paid only in $5, $10, and $20 gold pieces, refusing banks because he could neither read nor write and did not trust them. Henry's daughter Adele married cowboy Thomas Lowry in 1908. When her second child was born, Adele fell ill with a strange fever and died shortly afterward in her mother's arms. Just before her death, she promised, "I will come back and help you take care of my babies." Lowry drifted away, and both of Adele's children soon followed her to the grave. They were buried in unmarked plots beside her in Augusta's cemetery. In 1916, Henry sold his ranch, thousands of acres and 2,000 head of cattle, and moved the family to Helena. Around this time, stories spread of treasure hidden somewhere in Ford Meadows. With the rumors came ghost tales. Sheepherders passing through claimed to see the figure of a young woman wandering restlessly at night. Frightened, they refused to stay in the ranch buildings or even camp nearby. Treasure hunters dug across the meadows and under floors of buildings, convinced the land hid outlaw loot. Some said Henry Ford knew about it, but had never located the cache. Henry's half-brother Joseph later wrote in the Missoula Daily Missoulian that Henry himself had buried treasure there in the 1880s or 1890s. The legend grew, and more hopeful diggers descended on the land. One of Henry's daughters recalled in 1959, "My father buried his gold over many years. He told no one until just before his death in Helena in 1941. He called his children together, explained where to dig in Ford Meadows, and said it amounted to $60,000. He asked us to share it equally." Henry gave no map, believing his description clear enough. After his death, his son James and daughters Flora and Helen searched the meadows for weeks without success. James kept looking for years afterward, but the cache was never recovered. Both James and Flora later suspected Henry had moved the treasure before his death. To this day, no one has found the gold said to be guarded by Adele's restless spirit. Another Montana mystery is the story of the Two Sleeps Lost gold mine, believed to lie near Mosby, where State Route 18 crosses the Musselshell River. Long ago, Native Americans carried gold from this hidden mine to trade at Fort Musselshell, some 35 miles north in Garfield County. In time, all but one of the Indians who knew the mine's location were killed in a skirmish. The lone survivor revealed only that the site was 2 sleeps east of the post. Prospectors scoured the east bank of the Musselshell for years, yet the lost mine has never been found. Sapphire hunting has become one of Montana's newest and most profitable forms of treasure hunting, and it is spreading quickly across the vast state. Yet the story of sapphires here goes back more than 160 years. In the 1860s, old-timers working the gold fields around what are now sapphire mines often grew frustrated when their sluice boxes clogged with odd, colorful stones. Not recognizing their value, they angrily tossed them aside. It wasn't until 1865, during the last chance gold rush in Helena, that prospector E. Collins identified the stones as sapphires and pointed out their true worth. From then on, miners kept a sharp eye out for them alongside their search for gold. For a time, Sapphire hunting proved highly profitable, but over the years the business was taken over by large mining companies. When those mines eventually shut down, sapphire hunting faded into obscurity. Only recently has the pastime enjoyed a revival, sparked when a cattle rancher near the old mining grounds decided to mix cattle with gemstones, buying up dredge tailings from abandoned mines to sift out sapphires. The biggest modern find came near Utica, where sapphires were discovered in a rich ore vein. The property is now held by a group of men planning large-scale mining, with estimates suggesting it could yield as much as $60 million worth of sapphires. But these gems aren't confined to one spot. They can be found across Montana, particularly in the dredge tailings of the Missouri River and gravel beds throughout the state. Significant finds have been reported around Helena, Lewiston, Utica, and Phillipsburg. Sapphires are always blue, yet their shades are incredibly varied, about 360 in all, ranging from pale sky blue to the deepest midnight hues. And sapphires aren't the only treasure in Montana's soil. Diamonds, garnets, and other precious stones also turn up in its rivers and hills. Not far removed from these gemstone stories is another Montana legend, that of Almenso Yan. Around 1866, Yan left New York and came west, striking gold at Confederate Gulch in Meagher County. Popular among women, he became engaged to a wealthy widow, but on the very day of their wedding, for reasons never explained, he vanished into the hills and chose the life of a hermit. Yan built a small cabin on Beaver Creek and worked several gold claims that brought him steady wealth. Distrustful of banks, he always converted his gold into coins in Helena, then buried them near his cabin. During the cold months, he often bought goods on credit, joking to storekeepers, "My assets are frozen until the spring thaw." This fueled speculation that his buried hoard was hidden too deep to reach in winter. For more than 50 years, Yan is believed to have cashed away over $100,000 in gold coins, spending only when absolutely necessary. Then, on New Year's Eve of 1918, his story ended tragically. Neighbors, alarmed when he hadn't been seen for days, found his cabin burned to the ground. His charred body lay just inside the doorway. When Yan's estate was settled, the land sold for $15 an acre, 5 times the going rate, because of the belief that his treasure was still hidden there. Though no one knows for certain, most believe his coins lie buried near his Beaver Creek cabin, for he seldom left his claims except for supply trips to Helena. Gold valued between $100,000 and $150,000 is said to lie buried near Lower St. Mary's Lake in Glacier County. This story was passed down by the late author Maurice Kildare. In 1872, Donald Gregg and his family settled just south of the Canadian border, where he panned gold and discovered nuggets. 2 years later, Basil Dobbins arrived and began prospecting in the same area. By the fall of 1875, the Gregg family and Dobbins decided to travel to Fort Benton. They loaded their wagon with supplies, a tent, Mrs. Gregg and the 3 children, and the gold they had gathered. North of Lower St. Mary's Lake, their journey turned deadly. 4 outlaws ambushed them. Dobbins opened fire, but was killed almost instantly along with one of the road agents. Gregg fought back, killing another outlaw, but one of his horses was shot, forcing the family to stop. Donald turned to his wife. "Take the children and run to that old trapper's cabin we know about." She fled with the children while Gregg prepared for a final stand. Through the long night, he held his ground until just before dawn, when the remaining outlaws attacked. Gregg managed to kill one and wound the last man, who fled the scene. At daybreak, Mrs. Gregg returned with the trapper and found Donald beneath the wagon, mortally wounded. With his dying breath, he whispered, "I have put the gold in the ground, and it is safe." He died without revealing the exact location. Though Mrs. Gregg and the trapper searched, the cache was never found. To this day, the treasure of Lower St. Mary's Lake remains hidden. The first recognized discovery of gold in Montana is usually credited to Deer Lodge County. Yet some historians argue that Beaverhead County deserves the title. In 1862, when gold was uncovered on Pioneer Creek, Signs of much earlier mining activity were found, suggesting that the true first strike happened decades earlier. Legend holds that as early as 1806 or 1807, 5 prospectors ventured to Pioneer Creek after hearing a tale from a hunter with the Lewis and Clark expedition. According to him, there are nuggets big as hen's eggs in that creek. The hunter claimed to have learned of the gold from a friendly Indian, who later guided the prospectors to the spot. The group located gold near what would later become the camp of Pioneer, but they were warned this was hostile Indian country and their lives were at risk if they stayed. Ignoring the warning, they mined until they could load 10 horses with gold. On their way out, near the site of what is now the Big Hole Battlefield National Monument, they were ambushed. 4 of the men were killed, and the horses stampeded, spilling sacks of gold across the forest floor. The lone survivor hid in the bushes until the attackers left. Gravely wounded, he staggered to the camp of friendly Indians. Before dying, he told them, the attacking Indians left the sacks of gold where they fell from the horses. When the friendly Indians later returned to bury the dead, they searched carefully for the treasure, but found no trace. The scattered gold was never seen again. Among the many outlaw gangs of the 1860s, none was more dangerous or wealthy than Henry Plummer's band. Historian Thomas J. Dimsdale, who chronicled their downfall, wrote that when vigilantes captured and hanged them, almost no valuables were recovered. During its short reign, the gang is believed to have amassed staggering sums. Dimsdale estimated that they buried more than $2.5 million in gold across Montana. He noted specific caches: $68,000 near Gregson in Silver Bow County, an unknown amount near Bonner in Missoula County, $300,000 at Haystack Butte, $500,000 at Ford Creek, $25,000 at Romy Lake, and $400,000 at Rock Hill, all 4 of these last sites in Madison County. Other alleged stashes included $300,000 near Cascade and $636,000 along the Sun River in Cascade County, with 2 more caches in Beaverhead County. No record exists of any of these hoards ever being recovered. Somewhere in the valley of the Little Bighorn River in Montana lies a lost cache worth more than $25,000 in gold and silver coins and paper currency. This treasure represented the Army payroll, along with personal funds of 261 men of the U.S. 7th Cavalry, men who perished alongside their ill-fated commander, Brevet Major General George A. Custer, on June 25, 1876. According to accounts uncovered long after the battle, 3 men once knew the exact location of this cache. Yet for reasons of their own, none retrieved it. To this day, the long-missing money is believed to remain buried where Sioux and Northern Cheyenne warriors left it nearly 150 years ago. The only eyewitness testimony to the battle itself came from Sioux Chief Gall. His story was published in the St. Paul Pioneer Press on July 18, 1886. Gall explained that he led warriors across the river to attack from one side, while Crazy Horse struck from the other. The soldiers fought on foot while trying to hold their horses. When the horses reared, it spoiled their aim. The soldiers were very brave, but they did not fight smartly. Sitting Bull did not fight. He made medicine for us in his teepee. All of the white men were killed in half an hour. Years later, another account surfaced, this time from Spotted Hawk, who was only 7 years old during the battle. He recalled what happened after the fighting ended. When the soldiers were slain, the women and children came onto the field. We began to strip the bodies. While removing clothing, one child cut open a waistband and found pieces of green paper, some small, some large. We thought them pretty. Looking further, we found that almost every soldier had hidden such papers in his waistband. We did not know what they were, but since they were hidden, we knew they must be precious. So we carried them all back to camp. If historians could determine precisely where the Sioux and Cheyenne camps were before and after the battle, the search for the cache could be narrowed. Indian practice at the time was to hide valuables near a recognizable landmark, a tree, a butte, a stream, or a pile of rocks. Somewhere near the Little Bighorn, the payroll of the 7th Cavalry still lies undiscovered. This legend is just one of many, Montana's nickname, the Treasure State, was well earned. During the late 1800s, vast quantities of gold and silver were uncovered in its mountains and valleys. With nearly 18 million ounces of gold officially recorded, Montana ranks 7th among America's gold-producing states. Even today, prospectors still pan in the cold streams of the Rockies, searching for the glint of treasure. Not far from the Little Bighorn, another lost fortune lies hidden. A band of robbers once made off with $25,000 in gold coins and bars. After fleeing, they paused near Haystack Butte to divide the loot. But a Blackfoot tracker and a posse closed in on their trail. With no time to dig, the gang made a quick decision. They kept only enough coins to live on and disposed of the rest. Riding to a nearby lake where their horses had watered, each man flung heavy ingots into the deepest water. They knew the gold would sink quickly into the mud and remain safe until they could return. But none ever did. The lake swallowed the treasure, and like the Little Bighorn payroll, it has never been recovered. What became of the money taken after Custer's defeat at the Battle of the Little Bighorn remains one of Montana's greatest mysteries. Spotted Hawk, who as a child took part in the looting of the fallen soldiers, admitted he did not know what tribal elders did with the trove, but the historical record confirms its existence. Major William Smith, paymaster for the Department of Dakota, had issued the 7th Cavalry 4 months' pay, slightly more than $25,000, in gold coins, silver coins, and U.S. Treasury notes shortly before the battle. Officers and enlisted men alike also carried their own personal savings, both large and small. When Custer and his men fell on June 25, 1876, the payroll vanished. The warriors stripped the bodies, pocketed the coins, and carried off the notes, hiding them as they had valuables for generations, near trees, rocks, or other landmarks. More than a century later, treasure hunters believe that over $25,000 in gold, silver, and paper currency still lies hidden in the Little Bighorn Valley, awaiting discovery. Careful study of old U.S. Army maps, which mark the Sioux encampments before and after the battle, may yet provide the key to narrowing the search. Montana's frontier years also saw bold outlaw raids, none more tantalizing than the 1887 train robbery near Great Falls, Cascade County. The thieves made off with $25,000 in coins and 25 small gold bars. Fleeing towards Sun River, they were pursued by a posse led by a Blackfoot tracker. At Haystack Butte, fearing capture, the gang hastily divided the loot. With no time to dig, they decided to keep only a portion of the coins. The heavy gold bars were hurled into a nearby lake, where they sank deep into the mud. The posse, arriving later, noticed only hoofprints leading into the water. Assuming the horses had stopped to drink, they had no idea a fortune lay beneath the surface. The robbers were eventually identified as men from the DHS Cattle Company of Judith Basin, led by Clemens Durkle. Their fates were grim. 2 were killed in a shootout after robbing a small-town bank. 1 was sentenced to life for murder. Another died in prison in California, and Durkle himself vanished into obscurity as a cowhand in Washington. He later admitted, "I know where there's a fortune in gold, but I'm afraid to try and get it." In 1971, researcher Franklin Bell combed the site with a metal detector and confirmed the story by locating one of the lost gold bars. The rest, however, remains submerged in that lonely Montana lake. Not all of Montana's lost treasures were stolen by bandits. Some were taken quietly, right under the noses of mine operators. At the Old Hope mine near Basin, 2 high-graders secretly stole gold dust and nuggets from the ore they were paid to process. They hid their loot in a simple baking powder can, burying it near the mine. Before they could retrieve it, both men died tragically in a mining accident. Years later, a little girl picking strawberries stumbled upon the can. Unaware of its value, she didn't mention it for weeks. By the time she told her father and a neighbor, rains had likely shifted the soil. Despite searching with the child's help, they never found the can again. No record exists of this cache ever being recovered. Somewhere near the Hope Mine, that humble baking powder can, filled with stolen gold, still lies beneath the Montana earth. These are only a few of Montana's enduring mysteries. From the payroll of the 7th Cavalry at the Little Bighorn, to outlaw gold tossed into a lake in Cascade County, to a miner's stolen stash at the Hope Mine, the state truly lives up to its name, the Treasure State. 16 Montana counties, including Beaverhead, Cascade, Lewis and Clark, Madison, Missoula, and Silver Bow, each produced more than $100,000 in gold during the 19th century. Nearly 18 million ounces of gold have been recorded, with untold amounts still waiting to be found. For treasure hunters, Montana's rivers, valleys, and mountains remain a land of mystery, where fortunes lost more than a century ago may one day see the light again. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to read the original article or purchase the magazine from which it was taken, please check out our website, truetalesofburiedtreasure.com.